Hey there, Mr. Redder here. Welcome back to another episode of Reddit Podcast Stories. Our first story we'll be reading today. My new coworker demands to be called Miss Potter. After that, am I the jerk for not wanting to continue my daughter's gymnastics training? And after that, take me to my job. I don't care if the car has no gas. Now for every thumbs up this video gets, one Karen does not get to be called Miss Potter. Expelliarmus! So please smash that like button. And subscribe and turn on notifications for new stories from Reddit every single day. My new coworker demands to be called Miss Potter. I've been with my company for 6 years now. We are very informal with each other and have a fairly laid-back culture. The company president is Dave. My boss is Lou. I tell employees who call me Mr. Smith, fake name, that my name is Dennis and that there's no need for formality. We recently hired a new employee. The fake name that I will give her for this post is Jenny Potter. In coming on board with us, Jenny signed all of her emails as Miss Potter. When she answers the phone, it's, "Good afternoon, this is Miss Potter speaking." When she calls me, it's, "Good morning, Dennis, this is Miss Potter." And my response is always, "Good morning, Jenny, how can I help you?" If I send an email to Jenny, the response is signed by Miss Potter, emphasis hers. She is 3 levels below me in a different line of report in terms of company hierarchy, so her supervisor's boss reports to someone on the same level as me, if that makes sense. It got back to me that she thinks I'm disrespectful for not calling her Miss Potter when I speak to her. When I speak to others about it, most state that they just ignore it, don't use a name to address her or respond to her queries, and let her call herself whatever she wants to. My boss thinks it's idiotic and that she's not at any level within the company to demand that. When I told my wife, she replied that it's obviously a button for this woman, and I'm being a jerk by antagonizing her. My counterpoint to this is that nobody in the company gets addressed formally, and if I don't call my boss or his boss by anything but their first names, I'm not going to formally address another employee several layers down the hierarchy. You're the jerk. She's being very polite about how she wants to be addressed, and you're being a jerk about it. She wants to be called Miss, call her Miss. Your position doesn't excuse this behavior, in fact, it makes it worse. She's not being that polite by demanding she be addressed with an honorific when no one else is. She's demanding she be addressed with more respect than anyone else at the company. Asking someone to refer to you as Mr. or Mrs. when everyone is on a first-name basis is the same as asking someone to call you sir or ma'am. He's allowed to be uncomfortable with that, and it makes sense that him being her superior makes it even weirder. It would be like having to call someone who works for you ma'am, or like students referring to a teacher by their first name and the professor responding with, "Good to see you as well, Mr. Smith." You know who historically gets referred to by their first name and asked to respond formally? Servants, typically. So yeah, the reason his position is relevant is because she's asking him to verbally refer to her as his superior when he speaks to her, even though she's dramatically inferior to him at the company. Edit. Her reasonable recourse is to ask to be called by her last name. "Hey there, Potter, how's it going today?" Very common practice, very normal. No honorific or implied relationship. Very simple, and she's clearly already comfortable using the last name, so it would be unreasonable to say that Miss Potter is significantly different enough from just Potter to upset her. He gets to decide to be called by his first name or not. She gets to decide to be called by her first name or not. Just because he breaks the conventions of basic business etiquette does not mean that she has to, no matter their relative positions. You're the jerk. You're the jerk. It's about boundaries, not hierarchy. Maybe she likes to keep it formal so she can draw a line between private affairs and work-related stuff, or she simply isn't comfortable being called by her first name. Absolutely nothing wrong with that. Don't you have more important things to tend to other than gossiping about coworkers and being a blabbermouth? Honestly, you sound exhausting to be around. No jerks here. She's allowed to have her preference, and I suppose you should respect that, but at the same time, I find it a bit disrespectful on her part to insist on a more formal address for herself in a work environment where that is extremely far from the norm. It would be one thing if everyone used titles at your workplace and she wished to be called properly, referred to as doctor because she has a PhD, but you insisted on saying Miss or Mrs., but no one in your workplace uses these terms, so it's just weird. Not the jerk. This is why you always have to weed these people out during the hiring process. My husband is a hiring manager for a large company, so I get to see the ins and outs. He'll spend days going through years of a person's social media accounts. If he sees anything at all to give off the impression that they'll be problematic, he shreds their resume and puts them on a do not hire list. I can tell you firsthand that he'd shred about 99% of the resumes from people here on Reddit. You are all just about as loony as it gets. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or the new employee? Please let us know. I'd start calling her Harry. Am I the jerk for not wanting to continue my daughter's gymnastics training? When my daughter was young, we introduced her to gymnastics. She was totally hooked and kept asking for more and more lessons. We encouraged her, thinking she would eventually lose interest. Now she's 12, training 20 hours a week, spending weekend after weekend competing at high-level competitions. Problem is, she's 5'7" already and still growing. She's starting to have ambition for D1 scholarships or even the Olympics. That makes me very worried. Being 5'7" basically destroys her chance of going to the Olympics. D1 gymnastics scholarships are already rare. The odds of her getting one with her height are even more rare. It makes me feel bad that our daughter is very, very dedicated. She's almost always the first one at the gym and the last one to leave. She watches replays of her routine on our drive to training, turns down social events because she needs to train, does extra conditioning at home. Yet, I cannot justify blowing thousands of dollars a year and hundreds of hours in time every year to gamble on something with so little chance of success. All the hours spent at her training, driving her to competition, is already causing our family life to suffer. She under-rotates her skills because of her height and gets injured more frequently than others. Her academics are suffering because of her gymnastics commitment. Her life is going in the wrong direction because of gymnastics. The Band-Aid is better ripped off earlier than later. My husband agrees. I broke the news to my daughter. Frankly, it broke my heart to tell her to give up on something that she's worked so hard for. I told her I know she's a hard worker. She would get much better rewards if she channels her hard work somewhere else, like in school or another sport. She plays tennis with her family only casually, yet she was able to win a few U12 tournaments locally. If that's not talent, I don't know what is. Needless to say, she did not take that well. She cried and cried and cried, locking herself in her room, refusing to eat, saying maybe if she doesn't eat, she will become shorter. I told her over and over that I love her and I just want what's best for her, but she wouldn't have any of it. I tried to reason with her, telling her chasing a dream is a privilege, not a right. No use. My husband has now softened even though we used to have an agreement. Our family is now phoning us to try and persuade us to let her continue training, even offering support for training costs and pickup and drop-offs. If she has the right body to be an elite gymnast, or if she is tall like she is, but is not struggling because of her height, I would support her unconditionally. However, that's not the case. Sometimes I feel like giving in, but to think it through, I was the person who drove her to training and competition. I'm the breadwinner who paid for her training. It should be my right to call it off, especially as a parent. Help me out, Reddit. Am I in the wrong? You're the jerk. You're taking away her passion instead of trying to come up with a compromise that still allows her to train and participate in what she loves. I was a dancer and too tall for anything. You know what? I continued to dance into my late teen years. I was aware of my limitations, but dance was never taken from me. You're taking something away from your daughter without even discussing it with her or trying to work something out. I'm gonna say no jerks here. Ex-athlete here that peaked at a whopping 5'2" in a tall people sport. I completely see both sides. Constant overtraining is just going to lead to a lifetime of injuries. I'm 46 and need surgery on 3 joints, but I loved playing and no one could tell me to stop. So here I am, broken by age 40, in for a lifetime of pain. Maybe try diving. Same skills, not the same height limitations. Can you taper off? 20 hours a week, frequent injuries, no social life, and grades not as good as they could be are super valid reasons to want her to focus her energy in other places too. This right here. The people commenting, "You're the jerk," clearly have no idea how much time, effort, and sacrifice it takes to be a serious athlete. My younger sister was in the same boat, swam 6 hours a day and wanted to make it a career. However, she's 5'6", and even she understood that it wasn't going to happen once she stopped growing. Reality sucks, but it's just that, reality. You don't get to change it because you want something really badly. Not the jerk. All the "you're the jerk" people are totally unrealistic. You're spending thousands of dollars and hundreds of hours, and commenters are like, "But she loves it." Her grades and social life are suffering, and she's getting injured, and commenters are like, But she loves gymnastics. That's irrelevant. Parents are supposed to step in when necessary. Well, what do you think? Is OP the jerk or not? Please let us know. Parents need to be realistic with their kids. Reddit boy used to want to be a rapper. Imagine if his parents had just encouraged his delusions. Come on, Karen, can't you keep anything a secret? Take me to my job. I don't care if the car has no gas. This happened a few weeks ago. I've been with my boyfriend for almost a year. He's a sweet guy with a big heart who loves me a lot. The thing is, he has a narcissistic mom who thinks she can do no wrong and everything bad in her life is somehow my boyfriend's fault. The thing is that she is also very stupid and constantly forces my boyfriend to do things that go against a regular person's common sense that instantly backfires. My boyfriend, if he wanted to, could write a post in this sub every week, but he doesn't know how to write in English, so here I am. I was spending the weekend at his house like I usually do. His mom's health these last few months has been terrible because of a bug bite on her leg. She hasn't received instant medical care because she was more focused on her work than her well-being, and the bite ended up rotting a hole into the flesh. So she now has to be forced to take proper medical care. This woman is so incompetent that she's a danger to herself. Anyway, their car has been broken for many months, but my boyfriend finally managed to make it work again. I know nothing about cars, but it's a Ford Fiesta from I think 2010 or older. His mom can't drive, so as soon as the car was working again, started to use my boyfriend as her personal taxi, just as we expected. She wants him to drive her to work at 5 a.m. and sometimes also wants him to drive her back home, which is a pain because our workplace is far away in the middle of our city. But if he refuses, she throws a childish tantrum until he says okay. She literally could get away with anything by throwing tantrums, even for stupid things. Once she was angered because boyfriend forgot to clean a small corner after he left the entire house perfectly clean. Back to the story. Friday in the afternoon, he picked me up at my workplace and we got to his house. We took a highway when the car started to lose some power until it shut itself down. We ran out of gas. He was angry because of all the times that his mom had made him waste so much gas that week. Tried to turn it on, and after some trying, he did it. Every few hundred meters, the car would shut down again, and we had to turn it back on. We barely managed to get to the house, and we had to call someone to give us 2 liters of gasoline that I paid for in cash so we could arrive. His mom came back at 8 p.m., and we told her how we ran out of gas. The next morning, we were asleep when she aggressively knocks on the door at 5 a.m. to wake my boyfriend up. This is usual. After he got out of the room, she told him to drive her to work. I was buried in the bed and then heard the loud tantrum outside that my boyfriend told her that the car had no gas. She was screaming for about 10 to 15 minutes. Yes, the car will make it. Son, I can't ask you for a favor without you being ungrateful. Why can't you take me to work? What an inconsiderate son I have. You want to make me walk with this leg? You will see that the car still has enough gas to get there. My boyfriend got into the room, took the keys, shoes, jacket, and stormed out. I didn't get out of bed. He was back in like half an hour. He told me that after the car shut down the first time while going uphill, she went quiet. The car did shut down 3 more times and she said nothing, maybe realizing that no, the car won't make it. They only managed to get to a bus stop where she could take a bus directly to her work, left her there and came back. The thing is that this woman never learns from her mistakes because it's somehow always someone else's fault. But at least she might feel quietly ashamed this time. And don't worry, my boyfriend and I have an exit plan so he can cut contact with her. We both have had enough. Am I the jerk for not wanting my ex's son at my Christmas? Trying to be concise. I was with my ex for about 7 years, never married. Lived together the last 4. Broke up 3 years ago. She has a 21-year-old son, Shane, who is now going to college in a town that I have since moved to that his parents do not live in, about a 6-hour drive. We've moderately kept in touch since the breakup, mostly just when he reaches out to me. I would have preferred a clean break from both him and his mom, but I've had a hard time totally shutting people out. I've not seen Shane in person since he was 18. Anyway, I got married last year and welcomed my first child 6 months ago. This will be my first Christmas with my wife and our child. Shane was going to go visit where his mom lives now for Christmas, but due to a pending storm, it's uncertain if he will be able to travel there. He called me last night and asked if he could spend Christmas with me. I was definitely caught off guard and told him while it's good to hear from him, it will be my first Christmas as a whole family, and I'd prefer to keep it to just us and maybe her parents who will stop by later. Shane was very upset, told me I was replacing him. I tried to reason with him that this is just what happens when adults move on in life. I said we could still keep in touch, but I wanted Christmas to be just with my family since it's our first one. He hung up and then later sent me a long text saying some super not nice things. My wife is glad I said no, but at the same time says she empathizes with how he feels and I should apologize but not necessarily have him over, but would support me if that's what I want. Am I the jerk for not wanting him to come over for Christmas? Edit. Shane's mother and I were never married. Shane's father is active in his life, he is just off and out of town. I only had met Shane a few times until he moved in during his high school years. He was very active in sports and extracurriculars, so he wasn't actually home that much for us to spend time together. Them moving in was supposed to be temporary after his mom got laid off, and it just kind of dragged into them staying. His mother was very adamant that Shane had a father and she didn't want me to attempt to parent her kid. While he lived at my house, I was basically an adult roommate. We got along well, but it was never a father-son type relationship. Can't believe the people that are voting you're the jerk. OP, you are not the jerk. You and your ex broke up years ago. You have your little family now. Yeah, the baby might not remember their first Christmas, but you and your wife will. Happy holidays. Not the jerk. An unbelievable number of people commenting you're the jerk don't seem to have actually read the post. 1. OP did not take on a fatherly role. He was explicitly told by Shane's mom she didn't want that. 2. Shane's father was and still is in his life and regarded by him as his father. 3. They weren't married. Not that important, but people can't read. 4. Everyone crying that Shane has nowhere to go, will be left alone on Christmas, etc. OP states he could travel to spend Christmas with friends or family. 5. Lots are criticizing OP for letting the situation go on as long as it has, but then want him to double down and have him over for an awkward Christmas with a family he's no longer part of and make it even more difficult to separate properly? Shaking my head. Yikes, dude. He was your stepkid basically for 7 years. He's stranded for Christmas. Would it seriously hurt you if he came over for Christmas? I'm grossed out by this, not gonna lie. If virtually anyone I have a stable relationship of any kind with asked if they could come to my house for Christmas, I would say yes, because it's Christmas. You're the jerk. Well, what do you think? Is OP the jerk or not? Please let us know. It's an awkward Christmas. My ex's son that I haven't seen in years came over. I took a coworker's spot after they complained that I was arriving late. My commute to work got progressively longer and unpredictable over the past year due to 4 bridge closures occurring within months or weeks of each other. No date had been given for their reopening, so for the time being, short of heading off for work an hour or 2 ahead of time, you risk arriving a minute to 5 minutes late once or twice a week. Everyone had been impacted by the traffic in one way or another, which I mentioned because there was no way someone could feign ignorance. One coworker, though, didn't care about legitimate reasons for my being slightly late for work every now and then, and complained so adamantly behind my back about it that my immediate supervisor reluctantly wrote me up. I knew it had to be that one coworker because they would get noticeably irritated whenever traffic conditions were brought up. They would leave the room, loudly interrupt with unimportant questions or comments, or just roll their eyes. They're also known for complaining about every little thing. At one point, having played a big role in not having a seasonal employee rehired the following year. Despite that coworker, I love my job, so I started leaving for work an hour and a half earlier than before. My arrival time is now anywhere from 15 to 45 minutes before my shift starts. And that's when I noticed the annoying coworker always arrives about 10 minutes early and always has a very convenient street parking space available. I used to park on a different side of our building before traffic got bad and had never noticed that they had unofficially claimed that public parking spot as theirs. Most of the time, I'm at work early enough to get my pick of any spot in our always crowded employee parking lot, but no parking spot other than theirs makes up for my having to wake up at 5:30 in the morning. That coworker can't complain about my being late now. They know better than anyone that I'm at work way before I have to be. I've mentioned my arrival time to other coworkers with them in earshot, so they know I'm parking there out of spite. I've also gone as far as parking right in the middle of a space large enough to accommodate their car and mine. I have no idea if they've complained to our supervisor about it or not, but I really want them to have been stupid enough to complain about my taking their public parking spot away. Am I the jerk for refusing to buy my husband an expensive car even though I have the money? My husband, male 35, and I, female 30, have been married for the past 10 years and we have 5 amazing daughters together. Because of that, I dropped out of college and have been a stay-at-home mom for the past 10 years when we had our oldest daughter. My husband is the breadwinner and I take care of all of the chores and childcare. While my husband earns quite a bit of money, which allows us to live comfortably, he's also obsessed with budgeting. Thus, I typically only have enough for household expenses. For the past 5 years, I've been working on a series of books. I've been writing everywhere I could, 5 minutes here, 5 minutes there, and while I sacrificed a lot of sleep, I have managed to finish my series, unbeknownst to my husband. I kept it a secret because he always considered it a waste of time. It was tough, but I managed to get an agent and was incredibly lucky to get a deal to have my series published. I was ecstatic, and when they told me how big my advance would be, I almost fainted. It's much more than I expected for a first-time deal. It's in the higher 5 digits. I haven't told my husband yet, and I had to borrow money from my sister to get an accountant. Ideally, I want that money saved up should something happen because I honestly don't know the details of our home finances or for our kids' future. Whatever will be needed. Plus, I would love to have some spending money without having to ask my husband, Greg. However, Greg found my contract and he is now demanding I get him a new car for Christmas. A very expensive new car, which would cost the majority of my advance. I politely refused, saying that he didn't need a car that expensive and that money was supposed to be saved up. I tried to explain my position, but he wouldn't have it. He basically called me a jerk without actually using the word. He basically called me a jerk. He said that because he supported me all these years, I owe him, and that without him and his money, I wouldn't be where I am now. He's told me that I either buy him the car or I have to start paying for household expenses half and half. The thing is, I would still be a stay-at-home mom. I don't know if my book will be a success. For all I know, this will be the only money I will ever get from my book deal because it'll flop. Am I the jerk for not wanting to buy my husband a car even though I have the money? Not the jerk. You've been working at home for 10 years, cooking, cleaning, looking after 5 kids. Let's do the math. Median US wage is about $70,000 per year. I actually looked it up. That would be about $700,000 over 10 years, wages your husband hasn't paid you. Even if he's paid for costs like your clothes, etc., there's still quite a chunk missing in wages. Your husband doesn't let you in on his finances, so you have to live in uncertainty about you and your kids' future, and I don't think that's right. He should be open about things like that. Have you ever seen a bank statement? Do you know his internet banking password? You really ought to know. He's really secretive about it, and he shouldn't be. You really need to discuss these things with him before anything else. If I were you, I would open a bank account in my own name, put the money you earn from writing books in there, and not tell him your password or anything about it. I've seen a lot of these if we paid a stay-at-home mom what one would have to pay an actual employee. The numbers get big fast when you consider the job covers childcare, drivers, housekeeper, and a few other titles I can think of now. Plus, often it's a 24/7 job, so not 9 to 5. The fact that you people are now claiming that the husband who works all day should be paying his wife to have the privilege of being a stay-at-home mom shows just how far our world has fallen. I'm a stay-at-home mom myself, and I thank God every day that I get to stay home with my kids while my husband chooses to go out and provide for us. We choose to have babies, and as mothers, we instinctually should desire to love and care for them. Expecting money in return for taking care of your babies, that's just sick. And if you truly feel that way, I hope you never bring kids into the world. And you wonder why men's mental health is suffering so much. Imagine having to go to work all day so your wife can stay home with the kids, then having her expect a salary for doing so. You people need serious help. Not the jerk. And a higher 5 digits advance, you are aware that big chunks of that are going to be going to your agent and to taxes, right? I mean, if you actually get 50% of your advance in your pocket, you're going to be doing well here. And let's say that 50K is not entirely a lot for years of work. You likely could have made that much working part-time retail over 10 years. Save it. Fire me from my job with no notice? I'll ruin your entire company. So start of December, I was let go at my job because they didn't have the time to train me for the job role. I needed to take out a loan to survive as it took me 3 weeks to find something new. I was hired for customer service administrator role, and as I had never done that type of work, I was told I'd be given full training on the job. The girls in the office never bothered, and I simply learned the job myself. I was told my performance was more than they expected, but suddenly I was called into the office at 8:30 a.m. when I arrived and told they were really sorry, but they didn't have the time to train me, so I would be let go immediately with no warning or notice. I was completely shocked by this. To add, my contract stated that I was to be given 28 days notice of termination. The company I worked for uses government grants as a form of payment, so they would regularly claim they have done certain things they haven't to make more profits from the government, such as forging signatures and lying about what work they have done to gain more funding. Basically, we get funding on government for providing services to lower-income customers. That's all I can say. I was involved in a different department, but shared an office with the department responsible for lying about profits. It's a small company, and the director would constantly hassle them to forge signatures as we can get the jobs through quicker, and if we had an audit, he would go to prison for what was being done. So when I got laid off, not by a manager, but someone who worked the same level in my department, I was absolutely livid that they dragged me in a 60 to 80-minute drive for me to leave 2 minutes later. I got home and immediately called the fraud whistleblower helpline. Nothing came of this until a week later when they wanted more details. Thing is, I'm very good at being silent and taking in my surroundings. I was able to tell them which accounts had been forged and lied about. I also had considerable email evidence of what had been going on. So long story short, the majority have lost their jobs, including the people who couldn't be bothered to train me, and went running to the director to fire me, including the director who is now being investigated for fraud and facing time in prison and a massive fine. Always live by the mantra, mess around and find out. Edit. By company, it was a tiny one that only employed around 12 people, so a lot of sketchy stuff happened as they weren't regulated. Going through a messy divorce, and my mother still expects me to prepare for Christmas as usual. Context. I'm 26 and going through a very messy divorce. Been going on for nearly 6 weeks now. Only found out I was keeping my house 2 weeks ago and managed to get my cats out of foster care and bring them home. Everything I have is going into keeping this house running as smoothly as possible, as I'm mentally disabled, so have to rely on the benefit system. Whenever I can't buy physical gifts, I've always done baking hampers for my friends and family. Usually start at the beginning of December and get huge amounts of hampers made. My friends and family know what is happening, and the majority of them have said they'll wait until January to get their hampers this year, as I've been scrubbing and sorting everything out as my ex-wife left me to do everything. Paperwork, finances, house, and our cats. Haven't stopped for 2 weeks until I finally collapsed out of exhaustion and got the flu this past 4 to 5 days. I've informed everyone I can what's happening, and everyone just wants me to get back on my feet and get better. Everyone but my mother. Like I said, it usually takes me a month to prepare the hampers. That includes homemade everything: Christmas cake, gingerbread, cheesecakes, brownies, and tarts as a minimum for every hamper. I usually make around 10 to 15 hampers, so you can imagine how much work and time it takes. It's only in this last week have I sorted out the kitchen so I could start preparing. And then the flu has struck me down. I've been sleeping most days because I physically cannot stop falling asleep. My mother is coming down Friday night and Saturday morning. I've had to say to her that I'm too physically ill and weak to do the usual orders in that time frame. I said that I'd do what I can, but most of it will come after Christmas now. That's not good enough for her. She said she wants the bare minimum: 2 full-size cheesecakes, a vanilla bean one and a caramel one with homemade caramel. And she also wants 2 full-sized Christmas cakes. She's not a baker. She doesn't realize how much work just the Christmas cake is, never mind the cheesecakes. The only reason these are essential is because they're being gifted to family members who no one likes, but we have to impress anyway because it's on my stepdad's side. I'm just so frustrated and tired and ill, and I feel like she's being entitled. This was the reason I stopped doing a big batch of baking for her. She's always expecting a variety of time-consuming desserts ready whenever she decided she'd pop down, and it was my ex who told her to stop last time. I get it's Christmas, but I'm going through a horrendous time right now, and I'm just trying my best. Tell her not to come. Full stop. You aren't a free bakery. These things are gifts. Very generous gifts, too. Not something she's entitled to. I hope you feel better. Email her the recipes and let her know that you'd like her to make 2 extra for you as well before she arrives. and if she could make 4 trays of brownies, that would be ideal. I yelled at my mom that I hate Harry Potter and to let me live my own life. As my title suggests, my mom is a huge Harry Potter nut. She and my dad actually met in a Harry Potter IRC, like Discord but for old people, in the early 2000s, got married and had kids, and from day one decided to embarrass us for life by naming us after some Harry Potter and Star Wars characters. It's honestly been horrible. I have a stupid name, and since we were little, my parents have forced stuff like Harry Potter, Star Wars, Marvel movies, etc. down our throats. Everything is about dragons and magic and blah blah blah. I'm so sick of it. Every birthday, every holiday, everything is just organized around fandom. So just like every Christmas, the days leading up to Christmas, we have to sit down every night and watch Harry Potter movies. It's so boring. I can usually get away with knitting or drawing on my iPad during this, but this year my mom was like, let's just have a technology and distraction-free night every night. I arranged to go over to my friend Missy's house instead for like 2 nights. Missy's family is normal and likes things a normal amount. My mom got really mad and started talking about how it's a family tradition and how I'm basically rejecting her, and went on her whole thing about how you wouldn't exist if it wasn't for Harry Potter. I finally had it and just yelled, "Nobody cares that you were a big name in the Harry Potter fan club. I don't like Harry Potter. I don't like Star Wars. I hate Marvel movies. They're all so boring. Please just let me have my own interests." I couldn't help it. I started crying because I was just so frustrated because everything always has to be Harry Potter this and Star Wars that. And now that we're all older, they started doing Game of Thrones. Everything is centered around some kind of movie or TV show or book series. Just once, I want my family to band around something that doesn't have to do with media or these nerdy things. We live in Utah, where we have like 5 national parks, and even though I ask every year for my birthday, I've never been to Arches. Well, my sister called me saying that my mom was angry and to just come home and to stop with the theatrics. I told her I'm sick of having all this old nerd stuff crammed down my throat, and just once I want to have a normal time watching normal Christmas movies and not having to pause for lightsaber battles. Am I the jerk? Not the jerk. And your post is a great warning for all those people still thinking about naming their kid Anakin or Khaleesi. You're allowed to have your own interests, and your parents aren't making life easier by forcing things they like on you.
And huge shout out to our newest official channel member, Light Fury Dragon. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. It really means the world to Reddit Boy and I. Support our channel by joining as a member today, and we'll give you a shout out in our next video.
Or come watch this video next. You won't believe what Karen does in that one.